Welcome to Classic Take, Season 2, Episode 7. The topic we will be discussing today is expecting Moshiach just a means of escaping reality? Now, some people think that when we're expecting Moshiach, and a person says, "Oh, Moshiach is coming, everything will be good." So at first glance, it seems like we're just being naive. We're just trying to escape reality. We're just trying to forget about everything that we need to do and just, say everything will be fine. There's no reason to worry. And it's not a proper approach. It's not, it's not the way we should be thinking and working. So I want to try to dig into this point a little bit in detail and explaining how expecting Mashiach is not ignoring reality, but it's actually understanding reality the most truest way possible. But first of all, I will start with a few points that I'll start with a story. There's a famous story that is mentioned in the end of Masechta Makkos. The Mishnah, the Talmud discusses there a story of Rabbi Akiva and his Chavedim and other sages that, he learned that were the leaders of the Jewish people at the time. And they lived through the destruction. They were right after Rabbi Akiva was born, before the destruction of the Second Temple. And he lived through that period. And he lived after then as well. He became a leader of the Jewish people after the destruction of the Second Temple. That was the era that he operated in. And had other great leaders at the same time. And Rabbi Akiva was there's two stories mentioned over there. There's ones that were going to Rome. And as they were already getting closer to Rome, but quite some distance away, they were able to hear, the noise, the great hoo-ha, the what's going on in Rome. Rome was such a big city, so rich, and so many things going on. And they started crying, and Rabbi Akiva started laughing. So they asked Rabbi Akiva, why is he laughing? And Rabbi Akiva asked them, why are you crying? And they said, this is the temple, Yerushalayim, is burnt, is destroyed, is desolate. And here, Rome, which is the nation which destroyed the temple, look how prosperous they are, how rich they are. So Rabbi Akiva says, that's exactly why I'm laughing. He says, if Hashem is giving such prosperity, such peace, such enjoyment of life, so to say, to people that are going against His will, the people that destroyed His temple, so how much more will He give those that to the Jewish people that do His will? Yes, temporarily we're suffering, but what we're going to get in the future, we could get some type of glimpse of the future by seeing the prosperity in Rome, because we will have much more than that. And then there's a second story which I want to focus on more, which is at another time they were going to the temple. They were going towards the area in Yerushalayim in Jerusalem where the temple is. And they reached the point of were able to see the Temple Mount. And they rent their garments according to halacha. When you see that area that they destroyed, the area where the temple is and it's destroyed, you have to rent your garments. Rabbi Akiva also rented his garments. And then they come closer and they see how there's a fox coming out of the place where the Holy of Holies was. The holiness is still there, but it was obviously in ruins at the time. And they started crying, and Rabbi Akiva started laughing. So they asked him again, why are you laughing? And he asked them, he asked them again with a question, why are you crying? So they said, the Holy of Holies is a place that even the Kohen Gadol, the most holiest Jew, was only allowed to go in once a year, and anybody else that went in, and even if the Kohen Gadol, the high priest himself, went in, and the time besides that time of the year, he would die. Pasuk says, "Azara karev yumas." And here there are foxes that are roaming around like it's their playground. Shouldn't we cry? So Rabbi Akiva says that's exactly why I'm laughing. He says that there's a verse that says that Hashem made two witnesses, there's two prophets. It was Zechariah and Uriah. And basically, without going through all the details of the explanation of Rabbi Akiva, but one prophet discussed the destruction of Yerushalayim. And it says, Tzion Sada Techarish. It says that Tzir in Zion will be plowed like a field, which is more specifically referring to the place of the Beis Hamikdash that will be razed to the ground, will be turned into a complete ruin. And the other prophet, that was the prophecy of Uriah. Zechayo prophesies that Oid Yeshu Zekanim Muskenis will yet come a time that old men and women will sit in the streets of Yerushalayim, and each one will have a staff in his hand from old age. So he says, until I saw the fulfillment of the prophecy of Uriah, that the Temple Mount was so destroyed that it became a playground for foxes, I wasn't sure that the prophecy of Zechariah will be fulfilled. He says, now that I see that the prophecy of Uriah was fulfilled in detail to the last T, I know that the prophecy of Zechariah will also be fulfilled. And, obviously there's a lot to discuss in the story. The simple question is that Rabbi Akiva didn't believe the prophecy of Zechariah. He needed to see one prophecy in order to believe the other prophecy. And one explanation is that a prophecy could be understood on multiple levels. It could either be understood in a metaphoric way, in a literal way. So he wasn't sure if the prophecies about exile and redemption will be fulfilled in its most literal sense. But when he sees how the prophecies of destruction were fulfilled in the most literal sense, he understands that the prophecies of redemption will also be fulfilled in the most literal sense. But the Rebbe touches upon this specific choice of verses, and the Rebbe says a very powerful lesson. Rabbi Akiva, when he was laughing, when a person is suffering and he knows in the future that he'll get something good, he's not necessarily laughing at the time. There's a time for laughter. There's a time for crying. When it's painful, a person cries. He knows that later this might lead to something good, but he's not going to be happy when he's suffering. So over here, what was going on with Rabbi Akiva? That he was actually laughing, he was happy, it caused him great joy by seeing this. True, when he sees this prophecy being fulfilled, that the holy temple, the Holy of Holies will be absolute ruin, that even the Holy of Holies will become a playground for foxes. Obviously, this is a reason that he should know that in the future, we will merit the prophecies of redemption to be fulfilled in the most detailed and literal way. But ultimately, right now, we don't have the future redemption. Right now, there's a terrible thing going on. So yes, it might be some form of consolement, of comfort, knowing that in the future we'll merit such great redemption and even every single detail will be fulfilled to the T. But how does that explain why you should rejoice by seeing the destruction? And ultimately, the explanation is, the way the Rebbe explains, when Rabbi Akiva understood that the destruction and the redemption are not two separate points. It's not that there's an exile, and then the exile is an exile, and it's later, after the exile, then comes the redemption. Rabbi Akiva realized within the exile he saw the redemption. He realized that the exile is a stepping stone, and it's not only a stepping stone, but it's leading into the redemption. And this is why the verse that he brings to describe his feeling by seeing the foxes roaming the temple, the Holy of Holies, he brings the verse, Tzion Sada Techarish, Tzion will be plowed like a field. There's different verses describing the destruction of the temple and of Yerushalayim. But this specific verse is highlighting a very powerful lesson. The verse says it will be plowed like a field. What does it mean it will be plowed like a field? It doesn't just mean that it will be raised to the ground and the earth will be turned over. When you plow a field, what's the purpose of plowing a field? So that you should be able to sow kernels in the ground and have a year's worth of harvest. Rabbi Akiva understood that the destruction was a plowing of the field. This was a step in the process of rebuilding. This was like a person that's destroying a house for the purpose, he's knocking it down to build a much greater building. That's part of the process. Depends how you look at it. If you break down the house, if let's say, God forbid, a fire comes and destroys a house and then a person rebuilds the house, okay, so there's two separate things. Something negative happened. And then something later, he maybe even rebuilt his house in a much nicer way. But ultimately, whatever happened was not a direct outcome. It wasn't, you can't say was good. When something bad was happening, it was bad. Whatever happened was later was a separate thing, a separate achievement. But over here, when somebody's destroying the house in order to rebuild it, it's better and much nicer. It's the destruction is part of the building. It's part of the plan. It's not done as a separate thing. Rabbi Akiva understood that when you look deeper into the exile, you see the redemption. You see how it's leading to the redemption. He saw that the fact that the Holy of Holies was turned into a playground wasn't just a negative thing that precedes a good thing. He saw that that itself is really a good thing. Now, for that, you obviously need to be on the level of Rabbi Akiva, and we don't have to be on the level of Rabbi Akiva, but we need Rabbi Akiva to highlight that to us. And now we can take this and try to internalize it by ourselves and to get that perspective, how the exile, the whole purpose of the exile, it's not just that the exile is for the purpose of redemption, but that from the deeper way, by a tzaddik, from the tzaddik's viewpoint, when the tzaddik looks into the exile, he sees that every event that's unfolding is really a way of paving the way for the redemption. So Rebbe explains that this is the way righteous people are able to view the exile. They're able to see, not just they see it as black and white. There's a time that is bad and a time that is good. They're able to perceive within the exile the redemption that's coming. This was a special gift that great Jewish people had. Rabbi Akiva had it in his day. And throughout the ages, there were other tzaddikim that they were able to feel and be able to see within the covering of exile. They're able to see what's laying beneath the covering. They're able to see the redemption. Now, what that basically means is that if a person understands the whole process of history and everything that's going on, we realize that it's not that, there's a problem that comes up. So a person says, Moshiach will come and take care of the problem. It's, first of all, it's not a point that he's escaping reality. The point is that what is the reality? What is ultimately what reality is leading to? Reality is leading to the coming of Moshiach. There are righteous people that are able to see in every negative thing that, and it doesn't have to be negative things, everything that happens, they're able to see the coming of Moshiach. Our sages foretold to us 2,000 years ago what the world will look like today with all the spiritual decay and how society is all the values of society are completely deteriorating in such a bad way. Our sages foretold that to us thousands of years ago. Why? Because they were able to see the whole blueprint of history, and they're able to see how certain events that to us seem like the epitome of exile are really leading into Mashiach. So first of all, to start with the beginning, when the person, let's understand reality as a whole. Reality as a whole leads to Mashiach. A further point is a famous Farbrengen the Rebbe once had. It was Shabbos Pashas Pinchas Tavshim Memdal 1984. And those were the years in the early 80s when the Rebbe started really speaking about Mashiach on a very strong and constant basis, and how we have to yearn for Mashiach and do everything we can to bring Mashiach. And the Rebbe started speaking. He said that people sit by the Farbrengen and some of them don't understand what's going on. He says basically, if I would rephrase the Rebbe's words and put them simpler, the Rebbe is saying, there's a Jew that has a dream. The Rebbe has a dream that Mashiach is coming. And he needs to share it with everybody. And every Farbrengen, instead of people being able to enjoy the Shabbos afternoon and take a nap, whatever else they want to do, they have to sit instead and hear this person saying his dreams and there's a time for everything. They hear it again and again and again. What's the point? And the Rebbe said that he got it all wrong. He said, what is the dream? The dream is the exile. Geula is the true reality. In other words, if a person understands the purpose of creation, he understands that what is not just that exile leads to redemption, but what is really real, what is really eternal, what is really the purpose, the redemption. The exile is a step, whether it's necessary or not necessary. Obviously, in retrospect, this was all part of the plan of creation. This is a step to lead to the redemption. It's not that there's two separate parts of history. There's exile and there's redemption. When redemption comes, we will look back at exile with a completely different understanding of what was going on. The true reality of things, the Rebbe says, is redemption. That's really what it's all about. The exile is the dream. In other words, what really should happen, what makes the most sense to happen from a tzaddik's perspective, somebody that understands the purpose of creation and the true dynamics of creation, is that we should have a revelation of godliness. The Jewish people should be together with Hashem, with their Father in heaven, in the Holy Temple. This is what makes sense. The true reality of the world is that everything is being created every second to serve Hashem. Exile is what doesn't make sense. So the Rebbe quoted the famous verse that says, "B'shuv Hashem es shiva sina inu kecholmim," that when Hashem will return the captives of Tzion, when Moshiach will come, will be like dreamers. And there's different interpretations to that verse, whether things will happen, we will be like a dream that Moshiach came. But the Alter Rebbe explains in Torah and Parshas Vayeshev, the Alter Rebbe explains that what the verse is saying, that when Moshiach will come, we'll look back at exile and we'll see that this was one big dream. This wasn't really a real reality. Today we look at it as a reality because this is what we know, this is what we're used to. But it's not really the reality. Tzaddikim are able to perceive and teach us and guide us that we should ourselves try to begin to understand and internalize it's not the reality. So anticipating Mashiach is not a means of escaping reality. It's far from it. It's that a person is able to appreciate what the real reality is about. And what he's trying to say is that you got it all wrong. Really what should happen is Mashiach should be here. This problem shouldn't exist. We got to do something, obviously. If he's still not here, we got to do something to reveal it. But a person shouldn't think, this is the reality. The reality is that we're supposed to suffer. We're supposed to have these problems. And let's try to find a way to deal with them within the framework of existence as we know it today. That is the dream. There's another point, which the Rebbe would mention many times, which is a very, very important and practical approach, which is it's practical in action, but it's a little conflicting in feelings. The Rebbe said that the Frierdiker Rebbe, we know at the beginning of the Holocaust, Frierdiker Rebbe said that Mashiach is coming. 1942 and 1943, those years was Frierdiker Rebbe came out with the slogan, L'alta l'tshuva, l'alta l'gula, we'll do tshuva quickly, Mashiach will come quickly. And they were expecting Mashiach's arrival very, in an imminent way. And the Rebbe expressed himself a number of times that because of various things that mixed in, Mashiach didn't come at that point. But that was a time that was very, was opportune time for Mashiach to come. And the Frierdiker Rebbe was hoping that Mashiach will come at that point. Now the Frierdiker Rebbe during that time he called in a certain chassid, a certain one of his followers, and he told him to do something, to build a yeshiva, whatever it was. And the person was taken aback a little bit. He said that Mashiach is coming. Like, what's the point that we should go to another town and try to build a Jewish school over there? Mashiach is coming any moment. It's all, why are we trying to do long-term plans of activities when we're expecting exile to end? And basically the answer was that the famous answer that I think the Frierdiker Rebbe gave, the Rebbe mentioned many times, is that we find when the Jewish people traveled in the desert, so they had a total of 42 journeys. Some journeys, one of the journeys, they lasted in the same one place for 18 years. There was other journeys that they were there for one night, for one day, a few days. Wherever they went, they disassembled the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and they reassembled it. Anytime they pitched camp, even if they knew that they were only going to be there for a day, or if they didn't know, but it makes no difference. Hashem obviously knew. They were still commanded that they have to set up the whole Mishkan, they have to set up the whole tabernacle and everything, as if they would be there for who knows how long. Why? Because this was the purpose. This was the divine plan. You have to do what you have to do. The Eibusha tells you it's time to move on. That's Hashem's calculations. But the point was that a person, practically you have to make long-term plans within the framework of exile. The fact that Hashem will send Mashiach, in our feelings, it's a little hard. From one hand to expect Mashiach to come right away, at the same time to be focusing on preparing things in exile. But ultimately, this is, from a Jew, as the Rebbe said, sometimes is demanded to do two opposite things. But there's one place that the Rebbe gave a little bit of an insight and to this. This was Simchas Torah Tafshin Nun. The Rebbe spoke then a lot about the idea of Einod Mulvada, how everything is godliness. And the Rebbe says when a person is permeated with the awareness of Mashiach is coming now, and then he goes and he starts making long-term plans on building institutions and doing things in the world that, we're dealing with exile mode. We're not expecting the imminent arrival of Mashiach, and all your plans are gonna, have no purpose. So the Rebbe says it's not really a contradiction at all. What is Mashiach? Mashiach is here not to superimpose something on the world. Mashiach is here to reveal that the world itself is one with Hashem. So when a person is permeated with that awareness, And he's making plans within the framework of the world as he knows it now, in order to spread godliness, in order to serve, in order to build an institution. It'll take many months of planning and fundraising and whatever, building, who knows what. It's a long-term plan. So ultimately, what is he doing? He's not escaping. He's taking the reality of Moshiach and connecting it with the reality of the world, or more precisely, he's revealing how the reality of the world itself is connecting with Moshiach. He goes back and he goes into the world. From one hand, yes, he's permeated with the awareness Moshiach will come any moment. But Moshiach is not coming to break the world. Moshiach is coming to deal with the world, to reveal how the world itself is godliness. So how do we reveal Moshiach within the world? By dealing with the world as we know it now on its own terms. By doing that, you're bridging Moshiach to the world. It might be a contradiction in our mind. Here we deal, Moshiach is coming today, my long-term plans. Who knows how long, but Moshiach will come. Moshiach will tell us what to do with the plans. But ultimately, in essence, it's not a contradiction. Dealing with the world as we know it now doesn't mean that it's a contradiction to the belief that Moshiach is coming at any moment. Because Moshiach is here to deal with the world as we know it now. And by us trying to bring godliness within the framework of the world as we know it now, this is helping bring about what Moshiach will do, which is to reveal how the world itself is one with Hashem. We merit to perceive the true reality with the coming of Moshiach, and then everything will become real to us. See the reality of godliness and the true reality of everything. May it happen speedily in our days. Amen.